Good morning, Live Oak Church. We continue in our study of learning contentment. Yesterday I mentioned that Christ is preeminent over all things, which means He's preeminent over our circumstances, the things that are causing us stress. He is still superior than those things, so therefore He should be superior in our thoughts. We should not allow our thoughts about this circumstance or these stressors to be superior than our thoughts about Christ. And it can't dominate us, because if our thoughts about this situation dominates us, then it is becoming superior in our own thoughts than our thoughts about Christ. Well, how do we do that? If Christ being superior, if the purpose of all of this is first Christ and Him being glorified, then how do I keep Christ superior in my thoughts so that I live to glorify God in this situation? And to begin that process, we want to look at Philippians chapter 16, verse 25. The situation is that Paul and Silas are in jail. Now, you might be familiar with this passage because it's where the Philippian jailer is saved because there's an earthquake, and Paul and Silas could escape. They don't escape, and then the jailer's asking, how can we be saved? But what I want us to see is, before all of that, what are Paul and Silas doing? And verse 25 says, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. So where were their thoughts in this stressful situation, which for them is being in prison? They were praying and worshiping God. So how do you and I keep our thoughts on the superiority of Christ and not allow these stressors to dominate our thoughts? We pray and we worship God. So what we need to do is, every time this situation comes to our mind, every time worry comes to our mind, every time we start thinking about the details, that should be the catalyst that calls us to pray and worship God. So every time when you're driving down the road and you start thinking about these things, instead of letting your mind go down that road, what you need to do is go, oh, this is the catalyst for me to pray, and this is the catalyst for me to worship God. So as soon as I start going down that road, I immediately start praying and immediately start worshiping God. And you may go, but I need to think through some things. Yes, think through those things in prayer and in worship to the Lord. So the decision that I've been talking about, that I've used as a time in my life, so I would start thinking through details, and I would then, thinking through those details, it would become an opportunity also to pray and worship. So I'm going to think through them with the Lord. Father, thank you that you're going to give me wisdom. Here's some thoughts that I'm having. You are superior. I want you to be worshiped in this. I want you to be glorified. And I want to be a servant who's following my shepherd. So thank you for the wisdom you're going to give me. Here's some thoughts that I'm having. Would you please guide my thoughts? So I'm still having to think through the details, but I'm thinking through these details as a sheep following my shepherd, as a son following my father. I'm not going to think on this thing without prayer and worship. So this thing is always going to be a catalyst that is going to cause me to pray and worship. Paul and Silas didn't know God was going to send an earthquake, because there had been other circumstances in Paul's life that God didn't do some miraculous rescue. He suffered through them. Yet, how Paul says, I've learned in every certain situation to be content. How is that? Because these situations cause me to turn to prayer and worship. And what can we expect if we do that? Man, Isaiah has an incredible verse for us. Isaiah 26:3. This is one worth memorizing. It says, you keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Why is that person's mind stayed on the Lord? Because he trusts in the Lord. And keeping our minds on Christ because we trust Him, He then brings perfect peace. He keeps us in peace, is what Isaiah is saying there. So as you think about whatever your stressor is today, is it a catalyst for you to worship the Lord, for you to pray and worship? Or is it something that's distracting you from God and it's now beginning to compete with God in your thoughts? Let it be a catalyst. Determine it's going to be a catalyst. And let's just see what the Lord does. Have a good day.